What if I told you there's a secret rule, a hidden pattern that governs the numbers that show up everywhere? In stock prices, population figures, the length of rivers, you name it. Well, we're about to pull back the curtain on one of the weirdest and most powerful principles in all of statistics.
Okay, so first, let me ask you something. Just think about all the random numbers flying around out there in the world. If you had to place a bet, which digit from 1 to 9 do you think appears most often as the very first digit?
Now, if you're like most people, your gut instinct is probably telling you, well, it's got to be an even split, right? It just makes sense. Each number from 1 to 9 gets a fair shot, about an 11% chance each. It should be totally random. But what if that common sense, that gut feeling is totally, completely wrong? What if the world of numbers actually plays favorites, a huge favorite, and it's kind of weird? Because this is what actually happens. In tons of real-world data, the number 1 isn't just a little more common. It shows up as the first digit a whopping 30% of the time. Then you've got 2 coming in at almost 18%. And it just drops off from there, all the way down to poor old 9. Let me put it this way. The number 1 leads the pack about 6 times more often than the number 9. That's not a small quirk. That is a massive, mind-bending imbalance. So, we're living in a world full of ones. Let's dig in and figure out what on earth is going on with this bizarre pattern. And the story of how we figured this out, well, it doesn't start with supercomputers or anything like that. Nope. It starts with some old dusty books and a really sharp observation that kicked off a statistical revolution. So picture this. It's 1881. An astronomer, Simon Newcomb, is looking at his logarithm books, the old school calculators, and he notices something funny. The first few pages, the ones for numbers starting with a 1, are way more worn out and smudged than the rest. Fast forward to 1938, a physicist named Frank Benford spots the same thing, but he takes it a step further. He tests this idea on over 20,000 different sets of real-world data and realizes, wow, this is a real thing, and he's the one who gets it named after him. Okay, so that's the what, but the real question is, why? Why on earth do the small numbers have such a huge advantage? Let's get into the secret behind this whole incredibly strange distribution. Officially, this whole phenomenon is called Benford's law, and all it really says is that in a lot of real-world data, the first digits don't just show up randomly. They follow this very specific, predictable curve, a logarithmic pattern. Here's a super simple way to wrap your head around it. Just imagine you're counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9. Each number gets its moment in the spotlight. But then you hit 10, and suddenly you're in the 1 zone for a while. 10, 11, 12, all the way through 19. You just spend way more time hanging out with numbers that start with a 1 than you do with numbers that start with a 9. But the really deep reason has to do with how things in the real world actually grow. Think about it. Things like a city's population or money in an investment account, they don't grow by adding a fixed number each year. No, they grow by a percentage. It's multiplicative growth, not additive. And it just turns out that kind of growth naturally spits out numbers that follow Benford's law. And here's where it gets really wild. The law has this property called scale invariance. That's a fancy way of saying it doesn't care about units. You could measure a bunch of rivers in miles or kilometers or heck, even inches, and you'd still get the same Benford's curve. The pattern isn't in our measurements, it's in the numbers themselves. It's totally fundamental. So, okay, this is a fun little bit of trivia, right? But it's so much more than that. This weird little law has an absolutely killer application in the real world. It's basically a lie detector for numbers. See, here's the thing about us humans. When we try to fake numbers, our brains tell us to make them look random. And what does that mean to us? It means spreading out all the first digits nice and evenly. But, as we just learned, that's not how real data actually works. Real organic data has that specific lopsided Benford's curve. Just look at the difference here. Honest, real data leaves behind a very specific fingerprint, that classic telltale downward slope. But fake data, it often looks way too flat, too uniform. And to an investigator, that doesn't scream random, it screams red flag. And believe me, this gets used all over the place. Forensic accountants hunting for fake invoices, they use it. Tax agencies looking for someone fudging their income, you bet. It's even been used to spot weirdness in election results or to double-check scientific studies. It's this beautiful, simple tool for finding a needle in a digital haystack. Okay, but let's pump the brakes for a second. It's an amazing tool, but it's not magic. It doesn't work on every single set of numbers, and it's super important to know when not to use it.
So where does it fall apart? Well, on data that's totally made up and assigned, like phone numbers or zip codes. It also doesn't work if the numbers are stuck in a tight little range, like say the heights of adults in a single classroom, or if there's a hard ceiling, like test scores that can only go up to 100. For Benford's law to work its magic, the data really needs to be able to stretch out across different scales.
And this is probably the most crucial point of all. If a set of numbers doesn't follow Benford's law, it's not automatic proof of fraud. It's just a signal. It's the data basically raising its hand and saying, hey, something's a little weird over here. You might want to take a closer look. When you really zoom out, what Benford's law shows us is something pretty profound about our world. The data that we generate isn't just random, chaotic noise. It has a hidden structure, a predictable rhythm that's humming along just under the surface, if you just know how to listen for it. And that kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If our numbers, the very things we use to measure reality, are following this strange, invisible rule, what other incredible patterns, what other hidden structures are out there right now, all around us, that we just haven't even noticed yet?